Conservative Party embroiled this morning in yet another round of infighting. This time, it's over leadership ahead of this year's general election.
It's after the former Levelling Up Secretary, this is Sir Simon Clarke, has publicly called on MPs to oust Rishi Sunak to prevent, he says, being massacred at the polls.
Delighted to be joined now by TalkTV's chief political commentator, Peter Cardwell, and more so, obviously, by the assistant US opinion editor for the Daily Telegraph, Poppy Comer. Poppy, good morning.
Good morning.
Cardwell, you all right?
Very well, thanks. There's Tory infighting. It must be a Wednesday.
Honestly, Pete, they have always been known, the Tory party, as the party that loves to tear itself to shreds. But this is beyond... Even I am thinking, just honestly calling an election, this is becoming a farce, isn't it?
It is a farce, and you've got someone who's a bit of an outlier, to be honest, Sir Simon Clarke. He was one of the 11 people who voted against the Rwanda plan. I can't see too many more people going over the top
Boris
in the way
fan,
that he has.
Boris supporter.
Big Boris supporter, big Liz Truss supporter,
Yep.
but he was Rishi Sunak's deputy at the Treasury when Rishi Sunak was Chancellor. So this is significant. People will listen to him, but whether people follow him or not, I'm not sure. Even Suella Braverman, in her excoriating letter resigning as Home Secretary, or sort of saying, you know, why did you sack me as Home Secretary, didn't call for Rishi Sunak to go. So if she didn't do that at that stage, things have changed a bit now, certainly, but I just can't see any others doing the same thing. But very, very significant nonetheless.
Just quickly, Peter, the logistics of this. Let's say there was another leadership challenge
please
before
no.
a
I'm not
general
sure I have
election.
the energy.
How would that all work?
But it wouldn't.
Let's see.
Simon Clarke is saying that actually they could do it very quickly. So his way of sort of putting it forward is what you've got to do is you've got to get down to 2 candidates. The MPs do that. He says that could happen very quickly, and then you could have an online vote of all the Conservative members. Now, that's problematic because quite a lot of Conservative members don't want to vote online. They want to hear from the candidates. The previous process took a whole summer between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, but then, of course, Liz Truss was felled after 49 days and Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister anyway.
Poppy, delighted to have you, and anybody that makes the studio look better with Peter Cardwell in it. Can I ask you, I mean, we can sit here and we can say this is ludicrous, that this Tory party is pulling itself to shreds, but I mean, what's left? Surely what that needs to happen is they need to disappear into the wilderness, a bit like Labour have had done under Starmer, and reinvent themselves, don't they?
I mean, that's probably the same sort of mindset that's behind this leadership challenge. If you're polling at 25%, you're going to get desperate. The problem is you're going to end up polling at 15%, 5%. Do they track 0%? If they have another leadership challenge, that is it. The last base of Tory support in the country will go. They will say this is a farce. You're not putting the interest in the country forward. You are just looking out for yourselves. There is no candidate credible now who's willing to take over the party. I can understand once you've been in opposition.
And you know what? Poison chalice. But this is the point. Why? Because I have a real issue with Sunak in that it was patently obvious to anybody with a brain cell that he did a deal with Suella Braverman to get the job. Said, I'll stick up for your Rwanda thing, and the reality was him. He patently, as a politician, wanted to be Prime Minister for 2 years more than anything else. Now, you'll tell me, of course you would be. Further down the line, they stick their heads above the parapet, so afterwards they can say, I didn't like him, or they're gunning to put themselves in. It is a joke. People in this country are laughing at the Tory party.
It's a total shambles. Poppy's absolutely right. I mean, the Tories in the last YouGov poll are polling at 20%.
Are they?
They are desperate. They're 27 points behind Labour. This is a real crisis. And, of course, in desperate times, people do desperate things. You talk about a poison chalice. I think Diane from The Traitors should be the next leader of the Conservative Party.
Do you think
Do you watch The Traitors?
I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
It's excellent. The tactics we're seeing from the Conservative Party are maybe what you're alluding to, is what we'd see in a kind of game show, this kind of ridiculous stabbing people in the back. Poppy, Sir Simon is saying, look, we want to kind of bring us back from the brink of being totally annihilated. What could the Conservatives do between now and, let's say, November to make sure it's not as catastrophic a loss as it potentially could be?
If she can work that one out, she'll make her fortune.
It's a case of minimising damage now. I'm pretty convinced there's nothing the Conservative Party can do to win. I think Rishi knows this. What he could do is pull out a suite of really bold, headline-grabbing policies. Because Rishi's a technocrat. He fiddles at the edge.
But
he kind of goes, look at this personalised video I've done.
The other thing is, I think, and people tell me this is wrong, I think that a lot of politicians in this country, starting with Labour in 2019, took for granted the Red Wall. I think that they believe, the British... can I just say this? I think politicians think that we don't care. I think the British public will go, you're only giving us a tax cut on that because you're thinking about yourselves. I think
Right.
people
They see
are
it
far
cynical.
more switched on than politicians give them credit for. I really do.
Completely agree.
But isn't it the case, Poppy, I wonder what you think about this as well, isn't it the case that Rishi Sunak wanted at one stage to hear radical ideas? He brought in evil genius Dominic Cummings back from sort of Series 1 for a brilliant kind of return to say, give me some radical ideas. One of them was people earning up to £100,000 a year reduce their taxes. These big radical, big bold ideas, which he thought maybe will win the election, and then didn't do any of it.
I think you're right. I think he's I don't think he's that good a politician.
No, he was. Look, Rishi Sunak was held up as both. Like, he's a safe pair of hands. He's the competent. He will get everything back on track. Well, look at him now. They're polling at 20%.
Yeah,
I mean, he has taken them backwards.
Yes, exactly. And in a weird way, I actually think the Conservative Party may have been better off if they'd stuck with a real kind of loose cannon. But it's too late now. Another leadership election won't fix it. You won't be able to fix anything.
They laughed at me about Trump, and you'll laugh at me about when I say this, but the Boris comeback starts now.
There will be those who want Boris Johnson to come back.
He'll come back.
No, he won't.
Yes, he will.
No,
You told me Trump had no hope.
I told you that, did I?
Yes.
Did I?
You also told me... if I'd said to you 6 months ago that David Cameron would be the Foreign Secretary...
Yeah.
That was a stunning surprise. Should we talk about David Cameron?
Did you like the way I did that?
So, very, very clever, Jeremy.
Seamless.
He's going to call for an urgent humanitarian pause in Gaza, David Cameron. He can call for that.
Yes, ain't going to happen.
Are people
But I
going
don't think even David Cameron, who is an international statesman who people do listen to, I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu, I don't think Hamas are going to listen to him. There's a lot going on internationally, certainly in regard to Gaza, but also some people say it's related, some people have said isn't, in terms of the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea.
Related to what? Of course, is Iran back to Houthis, aren't they?
Well, they are, of course, but the UK government is still saying the two aren't directly connected. I'm not sure I agree with that. But a big statement overnight from 24 nations. No more military action overnight, but basically saying, look, we've done it, we'll do it again if we need to, and we're going to stick together on this.
Very interesting what's going to happen. We've had people on this show, and Poppy, people will say, oh, you're warmongering by doing this. Many military people, Jerome Stark is on later, will say that we are actually at a very crucial point in our history, that there is this axis of power, which is Russia and China, Iran. You probably, could add other countries as well, and that we have to be aware. I find it myself, I'd love your take on this from the Telegraph. I find it incredibly ironic that Lord David Cameron is the Foreign Secretary and is talking about things that are going on when the austerity of his government destroyed our military capabilities.
Well, to be honest with you, a lot of problems today, you can kind of track back to David Cameron. This is the problem of bringing someone back from an earlier era of politics to try and deal with the problems of now. I mean, David Cameron, when he first takes office as Prime Minister, infamously says that Gaza is an open-air prison. I mean, this is probably something that's still quite fresh in the Israeli administration's eyes. It's not to say that Netanyahu has not gone too far. He absolutely has gone too far. But in terms of reining him in, you're going to need a very, very careful diplomatic presence there. And that's really what the US was providing through Blinken. You're not getting that through David Cameron. He is really yesterday's man here. And you're completely right with the military. I mean, we're now having to talk about conscription. But,
we are overnight talking about conscription. We said that.
But OK, you can conscribe all these people into the military, but what are they going to do in terms of military operations? They're not going to have any guns, they're not going to have any ships, they're not going to have any planes. You're just going to wear a uniform.
I mean, could not agree with you more, and people won't like this when I say it about Cameron, but austerity was the beginning of the end of our military might, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was.
I think it probably was, actually. The military has been saying for years it's been underfunded. It's certainly, when you have all these warnings, including from Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, that, we're going to be at war with Russia or whatever in sort of 10 or 20 years. We've had a number of those kind of warnings. But then the question is, what does that war look like? Are we talking bombs and bullets and traditional, what we think of as war? Or is it AI warfare? Is it online warfare? Is there misinformation warfare? A lot of that is really where the military is focusing its efforts. You don't necessarily need a huge number of people for that, but certainly, I mean, conscription is something that I think a lot of people will raise an eyebrow at.
Thank you so much. Poppy, definitely, I'm not about you. Well, you'll definitely come back here, won't you?
Absolutely.
No, PC is a regular feature.
I'll be back in an hour, I'm afraid.
An hour? Can you bring Poppy with you in an hour?
I think she's going home.
OK, fair enough.
Both of you, thank you very much.